View Vixen's Masterclass, an introduction to GraphQL and Apollo with Natalia Tepluhina.
So, what actually is GraphQL? It's often confused with some technology due to the QL part, but it's actually only the query language. GraphQL is a new API standard that provides an efficient and flexible alternative to your REST API. It was developed by Facebook in 2012, but introduced in 2015. And actually, it's totally database agnostic, as you can see, because it can work with any backend and any database. And what are actually the GraphQL features? The first one is query your API to get exactly what you need. GraphQL enables declarative data fetching, so you can form your response from your request. With the REST API, you have a static JSON response, but with GraphQL, you can get only fields you really need at this moment. Access many resources on single request. GraphQL can have an architecture which will use GraphQL as a data layer between your front-end and your backend API. So you can fetch data from multiple backend resources and pass them to the front-end formed with a GraphQL schema. And get predictive type system. Every GraphQL service defines a set of types which completely describe every data you can retrieve from this service. And these data are strong type. So you know every single moment you know what exactly will you get from this response. It's very nice, especially when you are working with a TypeScript or Flow. Let's compare GraphQL to the rest. And it's my math pain skills, sorry. But actually what you can see here is the request to the GitHub REST API. For now, GitHub has both REST and GraphQL API, so it's a really nice example to compare. And what we want to achieve is to have a set of repositories of a certain organization. Here it's Angular. And we also want to know which languages were used in certain repository and what forks does this repository have. So with the REST API, we are throwing the first query, getting the list of repositories. And these points here means we have a really big response. GitHub will have a response like 100 of strings or even more. Then we need one more query. We will go through the list of repositories, querying every one for the languages. And with the third query, we will again go through all the repositories, getting all forks. So it's 3 queries and a lot of data here. Let's compare it to the GitHub GraphQL API. I know the font is pretty little here, but probably you can see that we are querying for repositories, languages, and forks. And what we are getting are actually what we're asked for. It's languages and forks, nothing more. GraphQL has its own type system that's used to define the schema of an API. The syntax for writing schemas called the Schema Definition Language, or SDL. Let's have some examples for it. So it's a pretty basic example. It's a type user, and it has 2 fields, name and age. And you can see the name field has a type string. The age is an integer, and this exclamation mark means this field is required. GraphQL can have connection, relationship of types. So here is a type comment where we have a title of type string and we have an author, and it's a type user defined here. We can have as many nested types as we want, but at some point, every type resolves in these 5 scalar types, which are pretty intuitive. It's integer, float, string, boolean, or ID. ID is specific because it's actually a string, but it's not meant to be human readable. It's just an ID, very similar to relational database key. And actually, in this little workshop, we will use Apollo client. We can use GraphQL without any clients, but Apollo is really nice, and we can use it, or there is another client developed by Facebook called Relay, but Apollo, in my eyes, is better because it's incrementally adaptable. You can use it in every part of your application. It's compatible. It has a lot of integrations. You can use it with React, Vue, Angular, any specific framework. You can use it with mobile application. It's simple to get started with because you will see we need about 15 minutes to write an application with it. Inspectable and understandable because Apollo has its own DevTools. Small and flexible, built for interactive apps. I think it's easy because it has cache and it has a nice refreshing reactivity. It's small and flexible. Its bundle size is about 12 kilobytes, I think, and community driven because it's open source. Let's have a little look at GraphQL queries and practice. Here you can see the little playground by Prisma, and it's actually my local server with only one query. And let's check the docs. The great thing about GraphQL web interfaces, both Prisma and GraphQL, is they are self-documented. You can open web interface and check all the queries and mutations here. So right now we will try to make a query, and I think term query is pretty intuitive. It's a request to the server to fetch some data. You can see we have a query all heroes, returning the type. It's a type defined on Apollo server. It's a type view hero, which has 5 fields: ID, name, image, GitHub, and Twitter. Let's try to execute it. No effect because I've already executed it before the presentation. But let's try to add something here. You can see we are forming our response from our request. If we add GitHub, see, there is a GitHub. Also, we can pass parameters to the query, but not in this case, because as you can see, there are no parameters defined. So let's go to mutations and see how parameters works as well. Okay. Let's try to make a mutation, and mutation actually is a request to server to change something, to update, create, or delete. The most close analogy is actually REST post request. Let's try to make a mutation, and we want to add hero. In the docs, you can see that we need some hero as a parameter because we want to tell the server what actually do we want to add. And hero input, let's see what is it. It's type where the only required parameter is a name. Others are optional. Let's try to add a hero with some fancy name. And we want to pass a hero with a name. And we will delete this one. And we want to see what we actually add. Let's run it. We see we added a hero, and let's make query again to see what's happened. So we have a lot of stuff here, and here, as you can see, we have a new hero with a name test. So our mutation was successful. It's actually how GraphQL works. Now let's try to implement it in our Vue application. And to do so, we have a great plugin called Vue Apollo. And I'm happy because we have the author of this plugin right here, right now, in our little masterclass. And to work with Vue Apollo, we need to install all these dependencies and make this little config. But there is an easier way. We can use Vue CLI plugin Apollo. You can use it in console, but I prefer to run it from Vue UI. It's actually very simple. So here is the Vue UI. I've already added it right here. You can do it via plugins with adding plugin and searching for it here. It's really a great plugin because you can have both Apollo client integrated. You will have all configured things from this part. And you also can have an Apollo server running. So I have my server. We can check it and run it again. And as you can see, we have all the playground here. So let's switch to our application. It's an application to show the list, as you've seen the list of Vue heroes, but right now we don't have any connection with our server, so no heroes found. Let's try to add some. To do so, first we need to import GQL function from GraphQL tag. GQL here is a parser. It will parse your string and make a query from it. Another good way is to create GraphQL files and use a Webpack model for them. It's already done in Vue CLI plugin Apollo, but I will show you this way. And let's create our first query here. It's all heroes query. And let's go to our and ask for everything. We need ID, image, GitHub, and Twitter. You can simply copy paste it and use it here. Okay, here is our first query. And you can see here in data, we have an empty array all heroes. And we are iterating through this array here in vCard component. What we want to do right now is to fetch data from server and store them in all heroes. So we're adding a new property to our Vue instance called Apollo. And we want to fetch all heroes. We need to provide a query name. And let's check our application. See, we have a lot of heroes, but we have this test one, and some of heroes actually are not from Vue. And we're missing some heroes as well. Let's try to work with mutation to fix this. And I want to see you something. It's actually Apollo DevTools, where you can see the cache. And this cache means all this data are stored and cached right now. And there is our query with this query string. So let's try to make a mutation. I've already written it, but we want to fetch Oh, it's add hero. Let's start from delete hero first. It's easier for us. So it will be mutation. And let's check our docs again. What do we need for deleting hero? We need only a name, nothing more. And we're returning nothing actually, because as you can see, it's just a boolean, true or false. We don't need any result from delete hero right now. Let's create a new constant. And here it's a mutation delete hero with some static name, which is actually not so good, because we want to pass a name as a parameter and not to use a static value here. To change this, we can give mutation a name and provide the parameters. When providing a parameter to mutation or query, we need to specify their type. And it's not a JavaScript type, but it's a GraphQL type from schema definition language. You can always check it right here. So it's a string. And we will use the past value here in our mutation. Okay, let's start mutating. I already have a function delete hero, which is called onClick, but nothing happens right now. So let's add something here. Add a mutation. We're using the method mutate from Apollo. And what we need to provide here is actually the mutation. As we provided query here, we need to provide a mutation. And it's delete hero mutation. And as you can see, we have a variable here. We need to pass a parameter. And we are doing it with variables array. Object, sorry, not an array. And we're passing, oh, sorry, it's not here. And we're passing name of the function. Okay, let's go and try. So here is a test, and let's try to delete it. We are clicking, nothing happened actually, but let's try to refresh. See, it was deleted, but very important thing is we didn't update our Apollo cache. And if you want your application to be interactive and to work fast with Apollo, you need to provide also an update method here. So let's try to update our cache. The parameter here, store, is actually our Apollo cache. And the first thing what we want to do is to read some query from this cache. So it's store, read query, what query? It's called heroes query. Okay. Now we have all data stored in our cache. Let's check it again. And we have there a property all heroes with all our heroes. So let's change it. What actually I'm doing here, I'm filtering on all heroes array, excluding our hero to delete from it. And then we need to write query again. We've changed data, but we need to write it to the store. So we are writing the same query with our const data. Okay, let's go here and see what happens if we want to delete. Yay! Minus Angular hero, minus React and Redux hero. But we still have some lack of heroes here. Let's add some. And here you can see we have an add hero mutation. And it will return exactly the same type called viewHero. So let's try to do it. But what we actually want to see here when returning, we want to see all data, all fields. It's ID, name, image, Twitter, and GitHub. And now you can see very interesting thing. We are repeating ourselves. We're using the same fragment of code. GraphQL has a great instrument to work with it called fragments. We can create a fragment on every type we want. Let's try to do it. We will have a fragment called hero fragment on type viewHero. And we want to have all this data in our fragment. Now we are ready to use it. Actually, we want to replace all these fields with a single hero fragment with a straight operator. Okay, let's copy our fragment to our application. Let's have it here. And now we can provide it our query and then to our mutation. Let's try to replace it with and to provide it here as our constant. And let's check if it's working in our application. Yeah, it's working. Now we can use it in our mutation. And let's create a new mutation. Don't forget this GQL thing. I'm forgetting about it every time I try to write any kind of mutation. And again, we don't want to have this static value here. We want to provide a parameter. Oh, let's have it here. We will provide a hero object of type, let's check it, type hero input. And it's required, you see. Great. In our application, we already have a button Add Hero. And here is a form. Right now it's doing nothing. You can check it. It's just closing the form and nothing more. Let's try to mutate. So here is a method called Add Hero, and I've already created a const from the form values here. So we can pass this hero to our mutation. So our mutation now is add hero mutation. And we're passing hero as a parameter. Let's try to add some placeholder hero. And try to refresh. Okay, something goes wrong. As always. Okay, let's try to check the console and see what happens. Okay, I forgot to provide a hero fragment here. Right now, Apollo is complaining about it, but as you can see, it has very intuitive and nice placed errors. Let's try it again. Okay, now our request is successful. Let's try to refresh page. And yeah, see, we have a hero here. But as a case for our delete hero mutation, we also wanted to change our Apollo cache to show the hero immediately. So here is our update. And we're passing our store here, but also, and it's a bit different from delete mutation because we need to have some data to actually change our cache. With delete, we were simply deleting something from all heroes. But here, we really need to add something. And for this, we will use a very nice technique called optimistic update with optimistic response. So we are not only the store, but our data, actually our add hero mutation. And let's try to change our Apollo cache. Actually, the first and the last part will be completely the same. Here I'm wrong. Okay, it's fine. It was just my WebStorm lagging. And here we want to push our add hero. Okay, let's delete this one and try to add something placeholder again. Oh, it's already updated. We don't even need an optimistic response parameter, but I will show it anyway because sometimes you really need it. So in a common case, we also need to provide an optimistic response, not an update method, of course. Here we are specifying the type name of operation, and for us it's mutation. And it's actually an add hero. We need to specify type name as well. And it's a view hero. We need to specify an ID because we're, as you can see, we're not passing the ID is generated. And all the hero thing. Okay, let's check it again. Okay, it's here. Now let's add some meaningful hero. I even have your image VM. Yeah, now it's fine. And also, two useful links, it's official GraphQL docs and docs for View Apollo. You can use them whatever you want. And that's it for me.
Thanks for watching.